Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another 6 Degrees of Associations episode. We are actually at episode 11 now. Lucas and I were talking a little bit about where are we now. We started this in August. Can you believe it, Lucas? 11.
Goes fast.
I know. And no one better to celebrate it with than David Carnes with ArcStone. Welcome.
Hey, everyone. Hey, Aaron. Hey, Lucas. How's it going?
We're good. We're
Great.
good. I'm gonna go ahead and put it out as a mea culpa because you're the best guest ever. You've been willing to show up twice. Had internet connectivities issue on my end last time, and so thank you for your graciousness to show up again and give us all your brilliance all over. I promise everyone it's going to be super interesting because we've already heard it once and it was pretty awesome. So thank you so much.
Now you're just queuing it up for me, though. You know, the third time.
No pressure, no pressure. Yeah, 3 times the charm. We've all tested our run speed. We think we're okay. So bear with us, everybody. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we met with Stuart over at Social Frequency Media Company, who talked a lot about the podcast platform. He was very into storytelling, but specifically sort of led us down the path of podcast platform. However, ArcStone has a really cool story and a long history of building websites and digital presence for associations. And what I saw throughout your website, which by the way is awesome, super, like a ton of educational resources for people. So everyone out there, make sure you go check it out. Lots of webinars and white papers and things like that. But storytelling is mentioned throughout your website as a core tenet of how you look at web design. So I'm just curious, how do you see storytelling coming to life in web design and building a digital presence for an organization?
Well, that's awesome. And thanks so much for the plug. That's ArcStone, ArcStone.com.
There you go. Get it right.
Yeah. No, that's, thanks for that. And, you know, I think storytelling is in our DNA. You know, it all, began around the campfire, and no doubt, the tribes that survived were those that could share stories, that could pass knowledge. And so I think it goes back, it's that deep, that's how we're moved emotionally. And it motivates us, it brings us together, and, it's just at the center of our communication. So storytelling is, central on our website. It's central for a lot of the nonprofits and associations we work with, helping them to find their stories, kind of tease those out, and then communicate them. And now we've got so many different channels, and it's so much easier than it used to be. Used to be we had to, we had to rub 2 sticks together to create that.
Create the mood.
Yeah. Gotten better and better, and we've gone from hand coding now to having all these amazing tools, podcasts and video and live streams and Clubhouse, right? Which is all the next hot thing, right? So,
are you on, David?
I am. And in fact, we were just talking this morning about how we want to engage at Clubhouse as an agency. So,
are you going to get an association on Clubhouse? Are you going to be the first one to get one on there? There's some on there already.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to evolve, but that's a great question. I think it could be a fantastic tool. Anything that brings those groups together to bring people together these days, especially with the isolation that we're all getting together and talking can only be positive.
We'll have to get you back on when you've had some time to experiment with it. We can all Clubhouse geek out and talk about whether we found it useful or a wormhole we all dove in and never came out of. And maybe we'll have to start our own room so that we can start carrying over content there.
Well, I'm wondering what we aren't doing right now on Clubhouse, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's right. We can just see our faces. That's all. It's a small clubhouse.
It's a small club. Yeah, Mickey Mouse clubhouse here. So, David, one of the interesting things that you mentioned in our first recording of this episode that I actually want to pick back up on is, and you just were talking about like how the tools have become so expansive and so at the ready for people to be able to develop all this. But there's also been an extraordinary amount of noise in the market because, of course, when you democratize the process, you democratize the asset. And now brands need to think a little bit more authentically about what stories are they trying to tell, and specifically through website design or even social media plans and digital marketing plans. The good old CTA, call to action, that everyone needs to think through is like, how are you helping people think of storytelling given the amount of noise and what they need to be thinking about as far as calling people to action? Can you give us a few examples of stories that you've worked on?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. You really have to focus on the audience. Who are you communicating with? And so I know a big part of any engagement we do with customers, we ask audience first. And we actually will go through the process of working with them to build a persona, which is a pretty common marketing exercise. A day in the life of this potential audience member. Start with what they have for breakfast. Actually, literally, it can be interesting to get to that level of detail, what their commute's like, the kind of podcasts they consume, where they get their information, their influencers. But you really kind of build out that target. And it works best if you have that target actually kind of personified. We oftentimes will give them a name. So it's really based on who you're telling that story to. And then what you had mentioned, that the word authentic, that is so key. You can't make this stuff up. It's just not right. It's not going to ring true. It needs to be an authentic story, and real images, real video footage is so much more impactful. I'll give you an example that is from a campaign that we did for a firefighter group here in the northern suburbs here of the Twin Cities, Minneapolis. So they were looking to do recruitment. Their volunteer numbers had dropped down. And so we helped them to develop some stories. So the first story, this is targeted to, try to recruit volunteers. We interviewed a woman who herself was rescued by this volunteer squad. And it changed her life so significantly that she said, I have got to do this. I'm going to pay it forward. And she went through the training, became a volunteer herself. And that was just a very compelling story that was on their website. And, they used it across all these different channels. You talked about all the different technology. You can repurpose these stories in a smart way so that you kind of tease them a little bit and let people in and give them the full scoop, watch a video, and then have that ETA. What's the next step for someone else to see that? If that story resonates, they're moved emotionally, they take that next step and reach out and connect.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome example, because you can totally imagine, an association coming, we just need more volunteers. Let's tell our story as an association. And, you're not tapping into, but what does that volunteer want to hear? What are they trying to find out of their association with you? What are they potentially trying to get to? So I think that's just such a beautiful way in which you were able to organize a story around what would really resonate with a volunteer, as opposed to feeling the desire to, tell a long story about the association itself or the firefighters group itself. It really was more about this personal connection with this one-on-one person who made that decision. I think that's really neat.
Yeah, you really have to take it from the audience perspective and start from there and then work backwards.
There's so many good stories too. In every association we've met with, you just have to ask and sort of pry and pull and ask all those questions, and they just start to come out, and it really sort of helps things take off, not only from a message, but from our perspective, when we start capturing information about how they're using benefit programs and suppliers, and how everyone's sort of working together to better the lives and the businesses of the members and create more value for the association. Those are just cornerstones of being able to really accomplish that, the storytelling and getting that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, association, you just consider the word.
Right.
That collective, and it's that collective experience, which, done well really takes on a life of its own. Really, it's 1 + 1 is 1 + 1 + 1 is 16. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
There's a multiplier that can happen, and those stories kind of, like any sort of culture in an institution, kind of really interweave themselves and become larger and really hold it together.
Yeah. Going back to tools just for a minute, ArcStone has a beautiful team on the agency side and the development and telling the stories through digital web, but you also have a technology platform that sometimes can sort of marry together and tell us a little bit about how you can create even better stories if you put those two pieces together.
Yeah, well, we have a membership management platform, or an AMS, and that's been something that has evolved and been part of the ArcStone story really since, 2000 or so. So, it's continued to evolve. And so I think it for us, it gives us a lens of metrics. So on the one hand, you've got the story, which is really soft and kind of creative and emotional. And then you've got metrics, member engagement, number of new members, number of actions taken, emails sent, communications, event registrations, so there's this kind of a database that's very database orientation, metrics, and then story. And I think you get both sides that you really kind of need to move a group forward. And so our AMS platform, which is called AMO, has evolved with that in mind, but really, beyond that too, it's really designed to help kind of small to medium-sized groups, I would say, up to maybe 20,000, 30,000 members to really run efficiently and in ways that connect, to help them really grow and connect and learn together.
Yeah, the data is so key. I mean, it tells a different story sometimes that you can really learn from. I think of that commercial, the sleep number or something like that. It says you can guarantee better sleep. No, we can prove it. So, I mean, you can't do that without the numbers, right? So
yeah, you need to have that tied in as part of it. And like we said, like on the story side, it's become easier and easier to do that sort of thing.
Yeah. You guys are also going for something I wanted to bring up again, was your B-Corp status. Tell us a little bit about, I had to look this up because I was not familiar. There's only a few thousand in the world, I believe. But yeah,
I think there are like almost 4,000 companies that do this, but it's a group that has come together that sees business as a way to make a better world. And so they actually have a declaration of interdependence, and it's about setting up a set of kind of social and communal policies, and also environmental sustainability. So having kind of those aspects, in addition to being a profitable business, where you move on and you have kind of a triple bottom line, where you're also kind of giving back and having transparency in the social side, and then also the environmental side, as well as the financial. So as part of that too, we're in the process of changing our corporate structures. So we move from an S Corp to a GBC, which is a Greater Benefits Corp, where we actually write this into our bylaws.
Mm-hmm. After getting to know you a little bit more and learning a little bit more about ArcStone, and then researching that whole B Corp, I'd be shocked if you weren't going for it, David. Really cool.
I was really surprised. I thought we'd do well when I took the test.
Yeah.
I feel it took me about 2.5 hours to fill out the initial round, and that's before they come in and do an audit. It's quite rigorous. It really is a high standard, and we scored below the average of the applicants, and so. We've got a long ways to go, Lucas. It's going to be a lot of work, but I think, it fits with how we want to be, I think, as a company. And I also think, anything we can do to think more broadly and bigger than ourselves is it's just going to be a benefit to the world. And it just, I think if people can come to work where it's more than just about money and personal development, it's a broader thing. There's some meaning. At least I need that too, and I think a lot of my colleagues at ArcStone and AMO really need that as well.
And I think a lot of the associations you're working with probably feel the same way. So it very much is in parallel with what you're doing and what they're doing. So
I do. I think it all resonates, and so it is kind of, and the branding is kind of an after thought, but there is that component, kind of. For consistency and authenticity again.
Yeah, sure. And for your own storytelling.
We can show the numbers. You display the score. The B Corp cannot be faked, and they come in and they do an audit. So they don't just give away the certification. It's rigorous.
Well, I think it would be also really neat for you to, just as an example to show others, like these are, storytelling can happen about anything in your brand. It doesn't, there's plenty of different ways to talk about the soul of your company, the soul of your organization or association, and this desire to become a B Corp, it's very much tied to the very values that you hold true of your company. So I can only imagine some of the short stories that could come out of places where you did think you were doing well and you had to go back to the drawing board and go, oh, I guess we didn't totally understand what it meant to be in compliance with that type of thing. So I'll be interested to hear the surprises that you had along the way and the hard work that you had to do and what it uncovered when you had to do it.
Well, that'll be the next round when we do this in Clubhouse, right?
Yeah,
it is. Exactly. We'll talk about it. The B Corp is something that you do, not just something you say, right? At that point, you've proven it.
Yeah. Well, we always like to throw me in at the end where I got to come in with the hook and leave a hook for people to go look for you. So you said ArcStone, ArcStone.com, right? Is your website where everyone can find you. And we always wrap up these episodes asking, from one associated person to another, who do you have in your network that you think that we should be reaching out to that our audience could benefit from hearing from?
Yeah, so, I've been thinking about this, and I do think, when we did round one of this, I'm going to stick with my first selection,
okay.
Who's JT, Joan Tezek, who is the executive director for the Colorado Society of Association Executives, so CSAE.
Awesome.
Local, state chapter for the ASAE. And JT, everyone just calls her JT. Everyone in the state in associations knows her and loves her. She's, been a partner and an AMO customer for years. And I love her. I think you guys will really get a kick out of her too.
Anyone who gets to just go by JT and it's not Justin Timberlake, I feel like I've got to meet that person.
I knew that was coming. Yeah.
The original JT, though.
The OG JT. All right, we're coming for you, OG JT. I love it.
Coming for you, JT.
Well, again, David, you are gracious and kind to allow us to re-record this. Thank you very much. Such an interesting story and such a really interesting company. I did have such fun researching and learning all about your team and your values and what your company offers. So I hope that our audience members will go and seek you out and learn how you can help them spread their stories.
Well, that's great. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Sure. Thanks, Lucas.
Thanks, David.